Welcome to the Million Dollar Multi-Op Podcast. Here, you're going to find education, entertainment, and a little inspiration on how to get to the next level. Are you a DJ company owner that's looking for the secret sauce? Congrats, you found it.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Million Dollar Multi-Op Podcast. I'm your host, David Osborne, with BlueprintLearn.com. Check this out, guys. We've got a really interesting format for this podcast today. I've got on the podcast my good friend, Dylan Weisman with Xplosive out of, well, I want to say Philly. Is it Philly or Jersey? Where are you based out of?
That's a great question. And Xplosive is hubbed in Central Jersey, Monmouth County, Manalapan, Marlboro area. That's where we are. I chose the life to not even be close to that.
Well,
I live.
Welcome, Dylan, from Philly.
Yeah.
Dylan and I not only are professional friends, we're real life friends, and we like to hassle each other about the rivalry between the Phillies and the Braves. And we were just talking earlier about how this year seems to be almost the opposite of last year, where the Phillies are on top this year and the Braves are gunning for them. So we're going to see how that plays out for the rest of this year. If you don't like baseball, so sorry for you. Okay, well, so the reason why this is interesting, and this is going to be a part of a two-part episode where I'm going to be recording with Dylan here, and then I'm also going to be recording with Dylan's partner, Michael Langsner, because they are real-life partners in their professional endeavors. And coming off the podcast where I interviewed Ed Petty, I thought, how cool would it be to be able to dive in and talk to both people in a partnership and kind of explore what that relationship looks like and get a little bit deeper into how that all works with the communication. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And let's get kicked off with Dylan. Why don't you kind of give us the little elevator pitch about Xplosive, because it's not quite the same as I think what a lot of our listeners are used to.
Yeah, Xplosive Entertainment is a boutique style event group. We call it that because we like to focus on just a few really, really high-end events. And those events typically are bar and bat mitzvahs. We'll do 85% of our work will be in the bar and bat mitzvah world. And then we'll do great high-end weddings and some really awesome corporate functions because the mentality of bar and bat mitzvah entertainment can translate really well in that. But really what we do is really high-level bar and bat mitzvahs with the interactive entertainment side, whether it be high charismatic MCs, party motivators. We have an awesome array of extra entertainment and photo booths. We have great lighting design, and what we try to do is bridge the gap between the spirituality and the accomplishment of bar and bat mitzvah and the celebration aspect that everyone craves. And I think that Xplosive Entertainment does a nice job of it.
I think you guys do a great job of it. And when I think bar mitzvah, and I think when a lot of you think bar mitzvah, you're thinking of that Jersey Shore style mitzvah where you've got dancers and special effects and you've got all the bells and whistles. I can tell you that the bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs that happen where I live are nothing like that. I wish they were more like that. And I'm not talking about Atlanta. I'm talking about Athens, Georgia. They are like, hey, guys, we ordered some pizza. And you're like, oh, man. Then I see the stuff you guys do on Instagram, and I'm like, okay, I see why these things are high end. And
yeah, I would say in our 30-mile radius is the epicenter for bar and bat mitzvah like craziness.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's wild. And you weren't always with Xplosive. Can you give us the Dylan story for where were you before Xplosive, and then how did you get involved with Xplosive?
Yeah, it's a really long story. I'm going to try to sum it up. So in 2006, I just had my bar mitzvah, September of 2006. And I had it with an entertainment company called BMP. It was Bobby Morganstein Productions. And I actually had Bobby there. And Bobby is like the godfather of bar and bat mitzvahs as we know it today. The next weekend, Bobby asked me to come work with him. And it happened to be at one of my classmates' bar and bat mitzvahs. Or in this case, bar mitzvah. He just saw something in me like, hey, you're fun and charismatic, and I know your parents. Can you come work for me? I was also really tall and decently strong at that age. So it was like, hey, you can move around my CD crates pretty nicely. But that formed my intrigue for entertainment, and I knew I wanted to do it. I remember talking to him during that time, like, I want to do what you do. And I was, whatever it was, 13 years old. Flash forward about 3 or 4 years, I'm now a freshman in high school, and I was also more or less the general manager for Bobby Morganstein Productions. I had been emceeing bar and bat mitzvahs with him for a while now. I had been I was his personal DJ at this point as well, but he was going out on events, and I was kind of taking it under my wing and learning everything I could. And all the while, I was kind of spinning up my own high school dance operation. And the following year, Bobby said to me, "Hey, I don't want any more competition with you. You're getting too big. We're partnering." So Bobby became my very first partner, and in that moment, we fused together. I lumped all of my gear, all of my bookings, all of his bookings. We all became one, and we took over a company, and it was called Flair Event Group. Flair Event Group became my baby from 2010, 2011, all the way up to 2019. And in that time, we grew it to be a really, really great bar and bat mitzvah brand where Bobby and I were partners. I was still helping him manage all of his other companies as well, but Flair Banker was really my coming of age tale. And then in 2018, 19, our bar and bat mitzvah company crossed paths with Xplosive Entertainment between mutual friends and great organizations like Think Tank. And in that moment, we decided, hey, why are we doing these separately? Let's do them together. We have a lot of the same clients. We have a lot of the same visions. And it became a merger acquisition where Bobby and I sold everything about Flair Event Group except the actual name to them, to Xplosive. And then we became partners of the Xplosive brand. And now here we are today, a handful of years later, a pandemic later, and dozens and dozens and hundreds of happy families and clients. And we got a good thing going.
It sounds like you got a good thing going. And I think one of the things that I think when you were with Bobby, you said something, you managed his brand. So in that relationship and that partnership, you were developing a lot of management skills, a lot of operational skills. Yeah. And you, in essence, were what? The general manager at the time of that, that side of things?
So Bobby had a lot of different brands at that point, and I owe 95% of where I am today from that start. Bobby is one of the pillars of my success story, or what I would hope to be a success story. And he looked at me not for my age, but for my abilities and my brain power and my willingness to do the hard work. And I think that won him over by allowing a 15, 16, 17-year-old to manage, a several $100,000 company at the time. So it was cool. And I was also helping him with all of the other things. He was spinning up a lounge company at that point, and he had his venues, and he had all of his novelties. So I learned all of the ways that I liked to work with people. And I also learned some hard truths about how not to.
I think I've heard this recently, but I've heard this packaged a few different ways. A resume is just a document that shows what you've done, not what you're capable of. So what I hear you saying is Bobby wasn't concerned necessarily what you've done, because you were a kid, you were a teenager. You can't look at Dylan's resume at age 14 and be like, oh, this kid's going to manage $1 million brands. He saw potential in you. He saw a light, your core, and he was like, okay, the person is a good person. I think this translates when we talk about maybe some training stuff in a minute, but that's what I hear you saying. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Bobby has a great judge of character when it comes to that, and he taught me a little bit about how to look at people for not what they can do, but what they will do for you. And
what they could do.
It takes good people to know good people.
Yes, it takes good people to know good people. I agree. Couldn't agree more. And there's a part to that story when you intersected with Xplosive, because when you came into Xplosive, that was Jordan Marshall and Michael Langsner at that specific time. And from my understanding, that was a partnership with Total, Jordan, and then Michael. And Mike was really doing the general manager role at Xplosive at that time, right?
Yep. So Jordan and Mike shared two halves of a brain. Jordan was the creative performer, the artist, and he one of the country's best at what he does, right? And then you have Mike, who was systematically really well put together. He ran a banquet venue that did bar and bat business. That's how they met. So they were two halves of one brain, and Mike did a lot of the general managing of hey, what are the logistics? How do I get the staffing? How do I do the onboarding? Are all of our insurance paperwork up to date? Things like that. He was really the executive of the company in its first push for growth. When Mike and Jordan became partners, that was the first real big step. They went from whatever it was to $1 million. They
Yeah.
crossed the $1 million threshold when Mike came into the fold. And then the next big jump was when we, merged and I became a part of the brand as well.
And I think a good theme, and I hope this shows up in all the different conversations that we're having here, is that some people are really just cut to be operators and integrators. Some people are really just cut to be visionaries. I know a few of them that if you try to get them to do anything systematic, it's a disaster. Some people are capable of both. And I think if you're capable of both, and a lot of people who are doing everything themselves forever, you have to be capable of both, at least to a certain degree, to a certain revenue point. But it's like whoever you end up partnering with or whoever you bring on, I think there's an opportunity to reevaluate who's better at what things and reevaluate what seat you sit in, because you may have always been an operations person. You partner with someone else, you might end up being better at the visionary stuff in that partnership.
Yeah. If you were to ask Mike 10 years ago, are you a great salesperson? He would say, I'm okay. He is a great salesperson, but didn't realize it until I came on and took a lot of the operational stuff off of his plate. I always thought I was a great salesperson. And then I realized that, really I'm not holding a candle to what Mike is able to do. And when you take your ego aside, when you put your ego aside and realize that you are painting a picture that's worth painting together, it makes a lot more sense to do some of the things that you didn't think you were good at, or maybe you're better at, or I'll take something off of someone else's plate so that they can be better at something else. In this case, Mike for sales, or my case, he took some of my sales away so that I can systemize our warehouse and become more efficient.
Yes. So, you just touched a little bit. If you could kind of sum up, what are the things, give me a list, give me a couple things that you think Dylan Weisman is excellent at. And I don't mean necessarily at Xplosive or in your job. Like, what are some things that you feel like it's your zones of genius?
So as an educator, I believe that I can take really hairy, audacious, complex problems or concepts, boil it down, and then present it to people in a digestible way. So I think that is just fundamentally a part of what I think I do really well. And then you take that and you can throw some charisma behind it, and it becomes captivating. So I think that charisma is a part of that. And then just being able to paint a picture and tell a story is another part of what I can do really well. Is, I can make anything sound really wonderful or horrific if I wanted to. Like, it's just one of those things where I like to explain and get excited about, and just being able to excite others is a part of who I am fundamentally. And then other than that, it's like finding the inefficiencies in anything and then building a process around it. I mean, that gets me going too. Like, I love that stuff. I love watching a 2-person job become a 1-person job because we made some changes. Like, that's just fun for me.
Yeah. Now, this is where I go, okay, sometimes when I talk to you, Dylan, I feel like I'm talking to myself sometimes, because I have background in education, and all the things you just said, I feel like are my strengths too. And I think a lot of it comes from a root of seeing a deficiency anywhere and knowing how to overcome, like a creative problem solving. So like when you tell a story, or when you captivate someone, or when you change the energy of a space, it's to get somewhere. Yeah. When you create that system to solve a problem, it's to get somewhere. It's to help a thing. And you have a big heart. You like helping people. How about Mike? How would you describe Mike's strengths?
Mike is really well loved. He is such a likable, lovable individual. I'm a little rough around the edges in comparison to him. Where I may shake a tree that shouldn't be shaken or shook. He is the person who's going to come in and band-aid that relationship. So he is definitely a nurturer by trade. It shows up in the way that, like, he builds vendor relations like no one else I know. People love working for Mike, working with Mike, and working on projects around Mike. And for that reason, he's a really good go-between for us. Mike is an excellent salesperson, as I mentioned, but that was only more recently realized. I think and then he's also a great executive. We're never going to lapse on our paperwork of anything. If it's time to renew the insurance, like he'll have it done already. During the pandemic, he had all of our ducks in a row for all the different bonds or grants or legal things that needed to happen. He was on it. So he's a great executive as well, which is kind of like two different sides of the spectrum in a way, where you have like the sales and the marketing aspect that he's very good at and he likes doing. And then he also has this like executive C-suite style brain as well. So he's really, really excellent at that. He is the type of person who can do everything in a role, but I think he's happy not to.
Well, I think you kind of are too. I think that's why you guys have a really cool, unique relationship where you probably could complement or do some of the things the other person can do. Maybe not as well. Maybe, you sounds like you found some of those spots where you really excel, but you could. Like, if Mike goes out for a week, you can sell.
David, you want to know where you have a great partner? Is if you can go on vacation and the building doesn't burn down in your absence. That like knowing that I can go away for a handful of days, not even look at my phone, and everything that I was able to do will fall on Mike's plate, and then he'll do it well, or vice versa. Mike just got back from vacation recently, and he said, dude, this is the first time in a long time I felt like I didn't need to know what was going on. That's how you know you have a really wonderful partnership.
That is gold right there. That's absolutely gold. So let's talk about these specific core responsibilities in Xplosive that you are focused on personally, like your specific role.
So the way that I like to explain it is, if it happens inside the next 4 weeks, it's going to fall under my realm of responsibility. I run our entire warehouse, and when you have a multi-op, especially with bar and bat mitzvahs, you have several trucks going to a singular event, and you're pulling from warehouse resources. We have 3 different warehouses crossing a couple state lines. So logistically, it's a nightmare. So my job is to look at everything that's needed for this event to be successful, and then take all of that, find the right trucks, find the right drivers, and get the warehouse moving in a way that they show up on Monday morning, can unload and efficiently repack for the upcoming events. So everything that has to do with our warehouse coming in or out will come through me first. Additionally, a big part of mine is in the performance side. I still do about 90 events a year. And most of them are emceeing bar and bat mitzvahs. But in that process, I'm training all of our new talent. In the bar and bat mitzvah world, your sellable good, first and foremost, is your abilities to have great MCs. And that falls on me as well. So like today, I'm going to have an in-person performance training with one of our up-and-coming stars, and that falls under my plate as well. So I'm constantly training and tooling them up, ready to go. And other than that, helping synergize the teams that are going to go out. Because at any given time, you could have 15, 20 different staff members going out on an event between MC, DJ, performers, subcontractors, magicians, caricaturists. You can have a bunch of these different individuals. So part of my job is to work with my talent coordinator and say, hey, do we have the right people in the right places? Additionally, because we span such a big group of a big area, I have to find like, hey, does it make sense for this person who lives in Philadelphia to drive all the way to Hillburn, New York for this event? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I find those question marks as well and help my talent coordinator figure that out.
You are doing in this service delivery, right? Anything that has been contracted, you are making sure the client gets.
Yeah. So we developed we pulled from our partner in Total and their book it then cook it mentality. That's where the creative comes from. My job is to find the cook it. Mike will tell me, hey, we sold a boba tea station for an event. Well, we've never done boba tea before. So now it's time for us to figure out, all right, what does that stand look like? How are we transporting it? How am I making something that isn't mobile? What's the quality assurance on it? How can I make sure that it tastes good? So then we had a boba tea day in our office where we were test driving all the different ingredients to figure out how it's working. So I'm the cook it side of the book it cook it.
Yep. And to take a step back for anyone, so it's there's book it and cook it, and there's the one that comes before that, which is technically hook it, book it, and cook it or, that's a fun way to say the 3 KPIs that we track in business. So the number of leads that you're getting, or lead generation, getting people hooked into the business, that's marketing and branding. Booking it is your sales, taking those leads and turning them into clients, paying clients. And then cook it is the service delivery. That's your operations. That's what Dylan's talking about.
Yeah.
So really, and then doing a great job on the service side is what fuels more leads. So Dylan going out and rocking an amazing mitzvah, and all the pieces and parts are just in their place. That can help build venue relationships, word of mouth referrals. And if you know anything about the mitzvah world, you get one, you get in there with a group, you're in there.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
They will keep on going for you. Okay, let's talk about that overlap, because I'm going to ask this same question to Mike. The boba tea is a great example. Mike's over here doing his thing. He's selling what the client wants. He's finding ways to get great profit margin, sell a thing, and then he can trust you that you're going to be able to deliver on this thing. For so many people in partnerships, this is where the breakdown happens. How do you get consistency between the sales process and what Mike is promising and the way he makes people feel in that sales process? And how do you make sure that you show up, or your team shows up and knocks it out of the park and exceeds those expectations?
It starts with me and Mike realizing that our communication has to be spot on. It also means that we have to put aside the bad day we're having, or the struggles we're having with potty training or whatever's going on, and realize that we have to talk really openly and honestly. I ask Mike constantly, what's the expectation of this client? Have the expectations been set? What is it supposed to look like? He'll show me a drawing. He'll literally show me a hand drawn, this is what I want it to look like. And then I'll say, all right, this is what we need. This is how we need it. This is what we're going to do with it. So it's a really, really detailed and thorough communication line that has to happen, and it has to happen early and often. If you look at my phone, I call Mike 3 or 4 times more than I call my wife. I'm not saying that's healthy, but I am saying it's what helps us work.
So is it during the sales process? So Mike's selling a boba tea thing. Is he hanging up, calling you, excited to talk about it? Or is there a specific cadence, hey, every Wednesday we've got a production meeting?
Yeah, so every single Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning, we will get all of our upper level managers together. This includes our warehouse manager, it includes our talent manager, it includes all of our coordinators who've been working on events, and then myself and Mike. And we go over line by line every single job that's upcoming in the next 7 days. Now, I've already seen these sheets. I've been working on them for 3 or 4 weeks now, so I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. But every single job has a little bit of nuance that has been changed a little bit. So it's up to our coordinators and our salespeople to use that time to vocalize, hey, this is what's expected. Do we have this? And then I jump in and say, here's how we're accomplishing it. This is what we're doing. Here's who we have. And these meetings can be 2 hours long in some cases, to the point where we actually had to add another production meeting on Friday before the event. Because when you get into the custom print game and stuff like that, have we printed the banners for this week? Things like that. So do we order the gobo at the right time and the right size? So we have at least 2 opportunities before we execute the weekend's work, at least 2 opportunities for the checks and balances of my side versus all the coordinators and salespeople's sides. So those meetings are very, very deliberate. And then you ask the question, how do you and Mike stay on the same page? That happens in a fluid motion. And sometimes we're not on the same page. Sometimes he'll come at me with in the production meeting, this is not what was expected. And we have to troubleshoot in that moment in real time. What's nice is that our team realizes that while Mike and I share a vision, share a picture, we have different brains and different outlooks. And I think that they respect the idea that we could work with each other even when one of us has made a mistake or a clerical error or overlooked something. So that's really helpful in our process as well.
I like that you have structured days, and then you also have as needed, right? Because I imagine in your role, just totally spitballing here, I imagine when you're putting together a plan that has so many moving parts, it's not like a wedding. So if you are not in the mitzvah world at all and you're listening to this might seem super foreign to you, but you could easily have 10, 12 or more people on site for an event. You said multiple trucks. This is a large scale production with so much management, I could easily see being like, well, with the expectation that was set, we're in a production meeting and no, we need this dancer because this dancer has this skill set for that specific thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, I could imagine it just being constant. So you probably trying to head some of that stuff off well before you even get to a production meeting and picking up the phone and calling Mike.
Yeah. No, I mean, it goes so far as like, which wire bin am I bringing to this specific event? Because we know that at the Grand Marquis, the proper outlets are 100 feet away. I got to bring wire traps and like things like that matter in the production meeting. Do I have the right truss size going because of ceiling heights? Like, this isn't just like it stays in a vehicle and this is system 1 and this is system 2. Like, I am hand selecting every piece of gear for every single event based on the venue, the guest count, the expectations, the look, the vibe, even to our DJ setups, like what facade or DJ furniture is going out because it matches up. This is a very girly, elegant bat mitzvah. We're sending a crystal facade as opposed to the LED one. Like, those details matter, and they're often found in the production meetings we have on Tuesdays or Fridays.
I think that's, I think for a lot of people listening, that's your next step. For some people, you might already be there. For some people, this might be 7 steps ahead of where you are now. But collect this information in your brain and think about this. The way what Dylan's talking about, it's working because of communication. It's working because of aligned vision and goals, and they found what works for them. So general advice working with a partner in these situations. I know you touched on it a little bit, but how do you keep the pace? How do you keep each other motivated? How do you check in to keep that relationship healthy?
Okay. A number of things. Playing wall ball with yourself is really repetitive. And you can get really good at throwing the ball and it coming back to you exactly the way that you want it to. It stifles growth. So 2 brains is better than 1 in a lot of cases. So understanding that if you're going to take a step into partnership, you are going to have a different brain, which looks at things different, thinks about it differently, and you have to respect the individual's mindset for what it is before you do anything else. If you're not willing to listen to that person, they're not going to be the right partner for you. So Mike and I often will have very different ideas and very different hopes and dreams for what's going on, but they all come back to a picture that we're simultaneously painting together. I referenced that a couple times here, but I believe in the greatest way to operate a company in general is to be able to paint a picture worth painting and describe it to others in a way where they're excited about looking at that picture or being a part of that picture. And I think that that's what a beautiful partnership looks like.
Level up achieved, Dylan.
Right. So that's exactly right. Is individually, it's the sum. How's the saying go? It's like
sum is greater than the parts.
Right. There you go.
And you've touched on it in so many different ways, but having 2 people that work on the same thing together allows you to work in your zone of genius and allows you to operate so much more efficiently because you're working on things that are so much better suited to how you're built. One thing I want to touch on real quick before we end is I want you to kind of quickly share about the different divisions when you're staffing, because I know you've got a lot of different categories to putting on a mitzvah, whether it's equipment, people, dancers, motivators, etc. How you make sure that your staff has enough work to stay on board if they're only doing 1 thing or 2 things, or I'll let you talk about it.
It starts and ends with, are they great people? Great people with great personalities for the right reasons can do any role in our company for the most part. If they show up with a good head on their shoulders, that are reliable and excitable and share in that passion for being great people for others, you don't have to have a great dance background. I can't really dance. I can pretend to dance, but some of our MCs are incredible dancers. Some of our motivator talents are off Broadway. Like, they just came from a Broadway show that they were on, and now they're at your mitzvah. Like America's Best Dance Crew, they performed at the Super Bowls. They're excellent dancers. But we didn't hire them because they're excellent dancers. We hired them because they have great personalities and have a never say die attitude that is just You can't duplicate that. So once you have that, it's very easy to start cross-training them into other roles of your company. I want my technicians who are behind the scenes running lights to have the same fun and vigor as my photo booth staff who are inviting guests to be a part of this activation here. And I have a really funny video. You'll probably see it on our Instagram somewhere of one of our technicians. His name is Tim. He is with the iPad playing with the lights on the dance floor because he could not be contained. He wanted to be a part of the celebration. And that's the type of person that we want on our events. So if you could have that person, you can start cross-training them in a way where the personality is the product. And then from there, you can teach them the hard skill of, please plug this wire into this thing. That's the easy part. So our photo booth technicians are often great lighting technicians as well, or zap shot photographers where we take real-time photos and then they get shown up on the TV displays. So you find those little transferable skills and they become more valuable to your company. A lot of our technicians turn into DJs just by happenstance of being around the DJs so often. A lot of our motivators are photo booth technicians as well because they can interact with people and they're not afraid of it. Or they become game attendants for events that don't need them as a dancer. And they realize that there is some compensation difference between the different roles, but they just want to be together and be at a party. And when you have that mentality, it doesn't matter what role they have. They want to be there for you and for themselves. And when that symbiosis is happening, it's really easy to find roles for them.
I just learned something from you. The way of saying it that I've never heard it said before. Personality is the product. I love that because, you're right. We talk about it all the time. You can go to any DJ Facebook group and you see the conversations where people talk about gear and they talk about what this light and that light. And sure, it matters to some degree, but people are paying for results. They're investing in an experience. They're investing in you to come and bring something special to their event. And when you scale and you got to bring a whole team along for the ride, getting the right people, the right personalities makes the rest of it a lot easier.
When we're in the sales process and a family comes to us and says, what makes you different? We aren't going to say we have the best speakers, because we do have the best speakers. We have the best lighting in the way that we program. We do have that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, oh, Mrs. Goldberg, your son is really into competition and he's a competitive dude. I have several MCs who have sport backgrounds who can run bracket style tournaments for your celebration in a way that's exciting for them. They will turn that ping pong table into a crazy, single elimination table tennis championship. That personality, those ideas that come with it aren't able to be executed by every person. It's able to be executed by select individuals with great personalities. So that's what we're talking about. We're going to take that creativity and we're going to take that personality, and that is going to be what you're investing your money in, is that personality for that product.
What a great way to end, talking about personality, talking about finding the right people to grow your team and to trust them with events that you've built up and you've sold. Dylan, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and for being part of a 2-part series. And tell the people how they can find you.
Yeah, man, this was so fun, David. I love what you guys are doing, and you got good things. So if you're listening to all this, you're already taking that step into the next realm. You can find all things Xplosive at xeevents.com. That's XEEVENTS. So at XEevents or xeevents.com. You can find me personally at official Dylan Weisman on Instagram, or otherwise, I don't know, search Google me.
Google them. As always, there are free resources, blueprintlearn.com/resources, and we'll see you on the next one.